Hey, this is Stevie J from AngryMarks.com, and since it's a relatively slow day in the worlds of wrestling and MMA, I thought I'd upload some of our old interviews. So coming up next is a clip from Joe Lavender of Suplex the movie appearing on Thursday night AMP. Now, I don't believe the movie was successful in its Kickstarter funding, but I hope he still went ahead with the project anyway. I'm going to throw his Twitter link up right here, and you can follow him on Twitter or send him a tweet and find out what's happening with the movie. Joe Lavender from Suplex the movie right here on YouTube, courtesy of Thursday Night AMP.
Hi, how you guys doing?
We're doing great, Joe. Thanks for joining us on the show to talk about your movie and your Kickstarter project. So, I guess without further ado, why don't you explain to the listeners listening right now live in our AngryMarks.com/chat and also checking out the replay on iTunes and Go Fight Live what exactly the Kickstarter is about and a little about the movie.
Well, the movie is called Suplex. It is an independent film about a IT guy, quirky IT guy, who gets fired from his job and decides that he wants to become a professional wrestler. And the interesting about that is that he's not professional wrestling material. Really, he's kind of a scrawny,
He's like
sort of out of
140
shape.
pounds soaking wet type of guy.
Yeah, pretty much. And he's been a huge wrestling fan all of his life, and him and his dad, they always went to the independent matches and everything. And he's a huge collector, and he's just at this dead end job. And one day he's sleeping on the job because he's spent all of his time surfing wrestling websites instead of working. And so he winds up in the boss's office and gets sent packing with a white box. And the next night he decides that, you know what? I'm tired of just sitting around doing what I don't really want to do, and I don't care what everyone else says. I'm just going to go for it, and he decides to become a professional wrestler.
So basically, he just decides today is the day I'm going to live the dream, whether, right or wrong, no matter what I look like, no matter what shape I'm in, I'm just going to go for it 100%.
Right, yeah, it just clicks one day. He's sitting at home late at night watching, some local TV, and he comes across this commercial for a local independent promotion that's putting on this contest where they're looking for new talent, and basically the light bulb goes off in his head, and he's like, you know what? This is a sign, and that's what I want to do. So he just, he goes on his journey to become a professional wrestler.
So now let me clarify something for people who might be getting confused between the movie and real life. Is there a promotion that you worked with for the movie, or did you create a promotion just for the movie?
Well, it's kind of a combination of the two because, to be honest, the entire concept of the film is almost biographical, I think is how you say it. Because I myself I worked, wrestled in the indies for several years in Georgia. And so a lot of the things that are in the movie are pulled straight from things that I experienced when I was doing it. And so because of the fact that, I don't know if you guys know this or not, probably, Georgia has always been a huge, hotbed for wrestling, a lot
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
today's stars, and a lot of them were bred right here. I've seen a lot of the guys that are like
Yeah, I
legends
mean,
now when they were wrestling in small little, high school gym.
mhm. I mean, after all, it's the traditional home of WCW, and Jim Crockett Promotions was big there, and Georgia Championship Wrestling. So obviously Georgia is going to be a hotbed territory for indies and for guys coming up on the scene. It's kind of one of those places to be.
Yeah, so there's not, I mean, in order to answer your question, no, there's not an actual specific federation tied to it, but because I was in it for the time that I was, I did make connections with a lot of the promotions that were running in Georgia, especially during that time, like NWA Wildside and things like that. And I've made contact with some of them about using their locations and things like that. But as far as a promotion in the film, it's gonna probably be totally created for the movie.
Very cool. Now, let me backtrack a little bit since you talked about your own history in the business. When did you first get your start, and how many years were you active before you decided to switch over to the filmmaking side?
Well, I was in my early 20s. I had just pretty much graduated out of high school, and I got married young, so my wife was nice enough to pay for my training and all that. And at the time, Dusty Rhodes was running a promotion in Georgia called Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. And several friends of mine were had told me they were coming to town, and my dad actually was a sponsor for a local civic organization, and he helped bring them to town, and I just did a little grunt work for them, hung up flyers and things like that. And I actually met another promoter at one of the shows who was actually in the business of training, workers or whatever. And so I just went from there, and I trained in a barn, and that's pretty much it. The first couple of matches, I wrestled for free, and I just went from there. I only did it for about 3 years, and the reason why I got out of it was because I did get hurt eventually, as everyone does eventually. And once that happened, I just sort of was like, you know what, I want to find something that I get the same adrenaline rush from, but without the danger. And I mean, so I started doing extra work in movies, and then in 2009 I wrote a zombie film, which is out on DVD now. That was the first film that I did, and then I'm still friends with all, a lot of the guys that I came up with, and it's still part of who I am. So I try to keep up with it as much as I can. Everything sort of changed from the time when I was doing it to now. Things are a lot different, but I still love it. And so when I decided I wanted to do this movie, I was like, well, this is kind of a passion project for me because of my history. I still like wrestling, and I think there's always been a shortage of those type of films, and most of them, some of them are good, some of them not so much, but that's pretty much how I got my start and how I ended up where I am doing movies now.
Very cool. And I got a question about the zombie movie I want to ask you, but first I'd be neglecting our chat room if I didn't say Ukrainian Irradiated Lizard has a question for you. He wants to know who you credit the most for getting your training in wrestling.
Who I credit the most for getting my training? Because of the question being asked, I'm going to assume that I probably know this person, and they're trying to bait me into getting a specific answer. I was trained by 3 different people when I started, and they know who they are, but I'm going to say because of the fact that I stuck with him the longest, and because he gave me the scar that I currently have on my chin, I'm going to say the real deal Jake Slater was who I would credit as for the majority of my training.
All right. Well, now we have a completely random question that I almost don't want to ask, but Angry Tensai, who is a known prankster in our chat room, wants to know from one movie director to another, have you ever seen the Hogan sex tape?
I have not. I didn't know a such thing existed.
Yeah, it was on TMZ a few months ago, and I believe there's another website that Hogan sued to try and get it taken down. I think it's called Gawker.
That is insane. I was not aware of that. I learned something new today.
Yes, you did. Now I got a question of my own. You said that you made a zombie movie. What was the name of that movie, and has it been shown at any of the horror film festivals like Day of the Dead?
The name of the movie is Exit 101. Originally, the title was called that, and the distributor that picked it up changed the name of it to Exit 101 Halloween Party Massacre. And to answer the second question, no, it has not actually been shown at any film festivals because at the time, whenever we finished releasing it, it was one of those deals where we had an opportunity to take a distribution offer, so we sort of skipped the whole film festival route altogether. And it went straight to DVD, which you can get it like literally anywhere that sells DVDs online, like Amazon or Best Buy and all those places. It went on sale last year sometime. I can't remember the exact day, but it's not technically a zombie movie. I just say that because if it's even similar at all, people call it that. So I just sort of adopted it and started calling it a zombie movie. But yeah, so I did that in 2009, and everybody in it is literally like volunteer. Most of the people who acted in it weren't actors, but it was sort of a learning experience, and I wouldn't change it, but it was really fun, and I'm glad that I did it.
Very cool. Now we'll get back to the Suplex movie because that's the main topic of today. So, how long do you see it taking to put this project together? And I know you said you've contacted some wrestlers about being in the movie. Can you drop any names on us?
Yeah. I'll start with the first part of the question. We're in pre-production right now. Basically, what that means is we're just sort of in the planning stages, and as per with the whole Kickstarter fundraising stuff, we're trying to raise money because you can't make a movie without money. And especially with indie film, it's really difficult because you don't have the big backers that studios have. But anyway, outside of that, what I'm trying to do is, because of my wrestling background, I do have contacts with, certain people that are in the industry, not directly per se, but I've already made contact with them in trying to get them attached to the film in either, bigger roles or cameo roles. And some of those people, I will say, for example, would be Diamond Dallas Page, Jay the Snake Roberts. Both of those guys are living in Atlanta right now with Scott Hall, I believe.
Yes.
And though I've already made contact with them, and I've had some interest from a couple of others. I've talked to Daphne, who used to be in WCW and TNA. And I've talked to Glacier, Dustin Rhodes, and again, I want to put a disclaimer that none of these people have, confirmed that they will be a part, but all of them have shown some sort of interest. So, with that being said, I just don't want anyone to go, oh yeah, those guys are, attached, because they're not right now, but we are working on it, and that is part of the whole fundraising thing. And then I've also talked to Tori Wilson's manager a little bit, and a lot. I can't say in what realm they'll be involved in the film, but we definitely want to have a presence from some celebrity name wrestlers or stars that are currently or either past industry folks. So,
All right.
Now, Suplex the movie. Why title it Suplex? Why not so and so becomes a professional wrestler? Why Suplex?
Well, that is actually sort of it's not a funny story, but it's an interesting story, I think. Whenever I was trying to come up with a name, I actually did a poll of about, I don't know, 20 or 30 different titles that I had come up with. I think some of them were like, Falls Count Anywhere or The Jobber or things like that. And, everyone sort of, were like, I like Suplex because it's short, it's specific, it's to the point. And then I got to thinking about it, a lot of wrestlers go by their name with some sort of just nickname, like I was saying earlier, Jake the Snake Roberts. Well, the main character's name is Joe the Suplex Valentine. So the name of the movie just goes, it's sort of, as a throwback to the character's name. And plus, it's one of the most simple wrestling terms I can think of, that if you say it to anyone, they're like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. On Kickstarter, you mentioned that Suplex is a mixture of the films like Napoleon Dynamite, Superbad, The Hangover, Talladega Nights, just with professional wrestling twist on it. In the past, there have been films that tell the story of professional wrestling in comedic form. Movies like the one and only Ready to Rumble, Nacho Libre, Below the Belt, and Body Slam. What role, if any, did any of these films play in as inspiration into making this film?
Well, as you mentioned, though, I've seen every single one of those films. I own Ready to Rumble. I think I watched it with my little boy the other night, actually. In the writing of Suplex, what I wanted to do was to not create yet another movie that was exactly the same as all of those. Because that's already been done. And while they're great, I do think, some of those movies have sort of a downfall in the fact that they're, I don't know, people don't take them as seriously as they probably would if they had a little bit more storytelling involved. Like for example, Ready to Rumble, I thought it was great, but it was obviously just a huge publicity thing for, the whole David Arquette angle that they were running at the time. It's all, the story just wasn't strong enough in my opinion. And the difference between those movies and Suplex is that it's gonna have a really sort of independent, personal feel to it. It's gonna sort of appeal to just the average person. And the reason why I compare it to those other movies is because, like, for example, Napoleon Dynamite was kind of a really offbeat, sort of odd, comedy. The characters were just sort of out there, and it's sort of the same thing with Suplex. It's not going to be just a super generic movie about professional wrestling. Actually, the movie has a lot more meaning behind it than just a guy who decides he wants to be a wrestler. But if you watch it, then you'll understand sort of where I'm coming from. But I mean, in in writing the movie, I just wanted to sort of separate myself from those films because, well, those films already exist, and I wanted to do something, a little different. And so
Yeah.
I've taken more of a offbeat approach to it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question. With the release of The Wrestler in 2008 and it receiving rave reviews from the wrestling community for its rawness and how it was so in depth in telling of what happens in the professional wrestling business. When coming up with the concept of Suplex, was there ever thoughts or pressure that the movie should be more of a direct telling of the road of becoming a wrestler in a drama, or instead of having it go as in a comedy form?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that because that is that's the question that I've actually thought about, myself a few times because I've seen The Wrestler and, I know that it had rave reviews. And one of the things that I wanted to do because of my background in wrestling is that while The Wrestler is a great movie and a lot of the things that happen in it are 100% true, I've witnessed them myself.
Mm-hmm.
I still thought that, as a wrestling fan, whenever I watch a movie, I kind of want to be pumped up, just like whenever I go to a wrestling show. I don't want to go there and be sad,
Yeah.
So I wanted to take what they did, but put more of a positive spin to it
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like it's not all negative. I mean, the wrestler
Yeah.
sort of spins it as if, if you become a wrestler, everything bad is going to happen to you and your kids are going to hate you and, all this stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, it can be like that, but it isn't like that all the time. And like, I can, honestly say that when I was doing it, I had a lot of fun, doing it in the time that I did, met some great people and a lot of them are still my friends. So I wanted to sort of take more of a lighthearted approach because there's a lot of funny stuff that happens too that people don't know about, in the backstage area, not only the gritty things that, oh, I can't believe that they do that, yeah,
Yeah.
we do, but there's other stuff that we do too that people will just probably get a kick out of, especially wrestling fans. So
Yeah, I remember when The Wrestler first came out, I remember that was like one of the main complaints by many professional wrestlers from the past and present, that they were saying, yeah, this stuff has happened to a lot of guys in the business, but this doesn't happen to everyone. The story of being a professional wrestler and the things you go in and outside of the business is not always a sad story. So it's good that you're taking a lighthearted approach and showing that, hey, there is some good things that happen. It's not always, bad things that happens to us.
yeah. Yeah, it was kind of hard, I knew that the wrestler had a lot of rave reviews, and I
Hmm.
had seen some of the guys in the industry give their opinion on it, and then you've got the whole angle of how much can you tell, and get away with not giving too much away, as you don't. I know, like for example, in the wrestler, they go in depth into the whole juicing and all that stuff, and I just felt like, as someone who was in the business who still sort of preserves the whole mysticism behind professional wrestling, I just,
Hmm.
I know that there's some things you just can't get away with without, uncovering secrets or whatever. But
Yeah.
I didn't want people to watch the movie and be sad at the end, because I mean, I literally almost wanted to cry at the end of The Wrestler, and it's not so much because of that's the thing that I went through. It's just that, they really, really, really painted him as such a bad. He was in such a bad state by the end of the movie. If even if you didn't like wrestling, you felt sorry for the guy.
Yeah.
Right, because by the end, you didn't, he didn't, whether he lived or died didn't matter to him anymore. He just wanted to go out there because wrestling was all he had left. It was like
Hmm.
performing in the ring. He didn't have a daughter. He didn't have a girlfriend. All he had was his last match, live or die. It was a very somber ending. So I'm kind of glad to hear that Suplex won't be like that.
Yeah.
So a quick question about somebody in our chat room is Joffrey Baratian one of the guys in the movie or that works with you?
I have no idea. I've never heard that name ever, but if they say so, probably.
Well, you said that Ukrainian irradiated lizard might be a friend of yours, so I had a sneaking suspicion Joffrey might be one as well. He
It is
basically,
very possible.
yeah, he said he would like to see Marissa Tomei naked again, so he'd be happy if she ended up in your movie.
Oh boy.
I would not be opposed to that idea,
No,
actually.
I don't think any of us would be opposed. Even Sierra, I don't think you'd be opposed to that.
I don't know, but you got Allie Brown in the movie as Maggie, you know, and she was taking it to you in the preview on the Kickstarter, beating you up.
Yeah, yeah, she took it to me pretty well in that.
Mhm.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we should get Allie Brown to ask a couple of questions about the movie because she's in the chat room listening right now. So, Allie, if you can hear my voice and you want us to ask a couple of questions of your director, just hit us up. We're going to ask the questions from the chat.
Did
So,
she have to undergo training too for the movie, or did
She
you help her out?
Well, she's going well for the role itself
Mhm.
as the video on Kickstarter is literally just a sort of a teaser pitch type deal,
Mhm.
just to get people interested. For the actual movie, yes, she will have to undergo at least some minor training because, unlike me, she does not have the background in professional wrestling. But, what you saw in the video, we literally just showed her and she picked it up,
Mhm.
like that. So, I have no doubts that she'll be fine. But yeah, everybody who is going to be in the film, who is going to get inside a wrestling ring and actually do some form of wrestling, will be trained to some extent. And we'll actually have some actual legitimate, wrestlers from the independent circuit around this area
Mhm.
who they're already calling me, wanting to know where I have if I have a spot for them. So we'll see
Mhm.
how that goes.
Do you keep up on any of the wrestling on the independents or on television?
Um, it's kind of funny that you say that, and I think this
Mhm.
goes for anybody who's actually in the industry or has ever been in it. I do to an extent, but I will tell you that when you're in the middle of actually either working or
Mhm.
doing something involving that industry, that you sort of separate yourself from, and you don't get to watch and do as much as you would if you were just a fan, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
But yeah, I keep up with TNA and Ring of Honor. And there's a couple of locals here that I sort of pay attention to, and then I really like this one called Pro Wrestling Gorilla. I think is
oh
it?
Yeah,
yeah,
they're really cool.
They have a guy that I'm obsessed with called Starman
Oh my
because
God. Same here.
because I
yes,
grew up with that game as a kid, and
yep.
that was always the character that I chose every single time. And so when I saw him, I was like, "Holy crap, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen."
Yeah, Sierra and I have been marking out for him for a while now. Whenever he shows up on an indie outside of PWG, he always walks to the ring doing the arm pump just like the 8-bit
Oh my
Nintendo
God.
game. It's so great to watch.
Oh, you should seen him the recent show they just had he was at Pro Wrestling Syndicate and he was getting beat down in the ring, Starman, and guess who comes out to save him? Little Mac from Punch Out.
Now, see, I would have sent out that lizard from South America for the pro wrestling game to chop on his head.
I was just like, what? I was just like, wow.
You know, that might even be the inspiration for the Ukrainian irradiated lizard in our chat room. Maybe he's inspired by that pro wrestling game too.
I would not
Never
be
know.
surprised.
No. But real quick on your career, and then I'll take it back to the Kickstarter and the campaign and the movie. Who would you say that you worked with while you were active in the ring that's probably gone on to the most fame and fortune since then?
Yeah, it was actually the very first time I had gotten in a ring. It was like a sort of a seminar slash training session sort of thing. And I've worked with a lot of different guys who have gone on to do, bigger things. Most of them were already, sort of big at that point. So I don't want to I don't want to name them, but this particular guy, he went on to do like Ring of Honor and TNA, and, he was part of the Rock and Rave Infection that was in TNA for a little while, and his name was Jimmy Rave. And I was like the
Mhm.
very first time I ever got in a ring was with him, and like I was surprised because I had no clue who he was, and he seemed to know what he was doing, but I had no idea that that very first time years later that I would see him on TV. So
Yeah, it must have been quite a few years back because now I'm hearing rumors in the wind that Jimmy Rave is thinking about retiring this year. So it may be this year is his swan song in wrestling.
it's possible. I know that he's been doing a lot of like wrestling training seminars sort of around this area, and he had been working with one of the local wrestling promotions he was doing the whole Ring of Honor TNA thing, but that would not surprise me. He's been at it quite a few years now.
And gotten quite banged up, which is a segue to another question I wanted to ask you before we go back to the Kickstarter is, what's the worst injury that you had while you were working? It's probably the one that put you on the sidelines, but if not, what else would it be?
I never really got what you would call seriously injured. I just got sort of spooked, as you could say. I was actually wrestling this particular night. The wrestler I mentioned earlier, who was also partly involved in my training, Jake Slater, and I was about a week or two away from getting married, and we had a match. I want to say it was a title match. I can't remember at this very moment, but he was supposed to be at my wedding, and I had my wedding cake was going to have me and him and several others as our wrestling characters, on the cake, and we wrestled, and I was supposed to jump off the top rope and hit him with a Frankensteiner, and he power bombed me. And when he went down with me, I don't know what happened, but somehow I got folded up, and my knee just slammed into my face, and caused my entire top section of teeth to go through my bottom lip. And so I wasn't hurt that bad, I wasn't hurt that bad, but to someone on the outside looking in, and my wife was there videotaping this entire thing. And so, and I get up, and I like you guys were talking earlier about Crimson, I had the Crimson mask. There was blood everywhere, and I, looked like Mick Foley. He had just jumped off the top of and wasn't, he just did a power bomb. How does that happen? So people immediately just thought I was, spitting up blood internally, like I wasn't hurt, visually on the outside. I was bleeding internally, so they immediately sent, the on-staff paramedics, whatever you call it, in independent wrestling, that are not really legitimate medical professionals, but they took me out into the back or whatever, and after that, I've never really let Jake down about the fact that he gave me this scar that's still pretty apparent on under my lip from whenever I was doing it, and that wasn't like the straw that broke the camel's back that made me decide to get out. There was other reasons, but that was probably the only time that I had been hurt seriously enough for people to go, "Oh, that just happened," So
right now, as I look at your picture on Skype, it looks like you're playing guitar. So, are you in a band too, besides being in the movie?
I am right now. Before I got into wrestling, that was my thing. I was a musician, and I did a couple of stints with a couple of hardcore punk bands. And we had a couple of CDs or whatever, and we toured and all that good stuff. But those days are sort of in the past. I'm surprised that picture is actually still up because I don't even see it. But that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it just occurred to me to ask you about that because I figured if you're playing in a band and you have a scar on your face, it might make you look like more of a badass.
Yeah, I never actually thought of it that way, but that is true. But I'm currently playing in a band now, but we mostly just sort of hit the local joints around here, and that's mostly for money at this point.
Understandable. So let's get back to the movie then. I want you to go ahead and plug that Kickstarter, let everybody know how they can contribute to Suplex the movie, and where you're at right now in the fundraising.
Okay, well, we just started the Kickstarter page. We're only about 2 days into it, and we've got another 28, maybe 27 days to go. The page is Kickstarter.com/Suplex the movie. We can probably just go to Kickstarter and search for it, or you can find us on Facebook at Facebook.com/Suplex the movie, and on Twitter at Suplex movie. Follow us on there. And basically, we're just trying to raise some funds to get started and to complete the film. We're also reaching out to some investors and trying to get some other funding. So Kickstarter is not the only source of funding that should be coming in, but a lot of people are using it now, and a lot of celebrities have sort of jumped on the bandwagon. And it seems if you have sort of a fan base that you can reach out to, it's a lot easier to raise funds on Kickstarter than if you're just some guy. And like I said earlier, we're trying to bring in, some bigger name wrestlers to have in the movie, and of course all those people are going to want to get paid. And in order to pay them, you got to have money. So it's not just you guys or anybody who's listening, who would be interested in contributing. It's not you guys just giving us money. It's sort of a passion project for me, but at the same time, I'm a wrestling fan, and I wanted to do a movie that would appeal to me. So I feel like if it would appeal to me as someone who's been in the industry and someone who, has always loved wrestling, I think that I have a good base in order to create something that would appeal to a larger, group of wrestling fans. So basically we're just trying to get as many people as we can. Just check out our Kickstarter page, contribute whatever you can. There's rewards on there for different levels of monetary contribution or whatnot. We're giving away T-shirts, copies of the movie, soundtrack, luchador masks that we're gonna have people sign. I think at the highest level, we're giving away an actual legitimate, real professional wrestling title belt. I'm not sure exactly who it's going to be made by just yet, but it's going to be awesome, and there's only going to be like 2 of them ever made. So if whoever gets that, if they do, and I lost you guys again.
No, we're still here.
No,
We can still hear you.
Okay. But yeah, so we're giving away a lot of cool stuff. Just anybody who's listening, check it out. We need all the help we can get. I'm a wrestling fan. A lot of my crew are all wrestling fans, and it's not a movie just about wrestling. It's a movie about anybody who's ever wanted to do something, and been told, okay, you're too small, you don't look the part, you're never going to make it. It's for sort of the underdog to be able to go, yeah, that movie's for me. So I hope everybody will check it out. And, again, follow us on Twitter at Suplex Movie and find us on Facebook. And, hopefully we'll get to make this movie.
If you didn't already have enough incentive from the plugs that Joe just gave, I think Allie Brown has a great reason to contribute to the Kickstarter. She says, it was a lot of fun beating up Joe for the teaser. I can't wait to hand it to him harder during the movie. So if you want to see that, contribute to the Kickstarter and Allie Brown will kick Joe's ass some more.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not looking forward to that, but the viewers can look forward to that.
I'm looking forward to some other parts, but not quite that part. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's been a fantastic interview, Joe. Thanks for coming on our show tonight. And hopefully when you get the Kickstarter campaign done and you get all your funding, we can get another update from you. You can come back on and let everybody know how it's going.
Yeah, I'd be glad.
All right. Well, we'll be talking to you again then soon, Joe. Thanks and have a great night.
Thank you.
It was great.